Record.
Okay, so a few little stories that I want to tell, linking to the National Computer Story, but I want to tell a big story kind of lead up. So I'll start with the small little stories, and the first story goes with the fire training camp, or the small fire station that we had. That was always off site. You're always training off site. You're never training on site. But they'd go to expeditions, and there was an actual fire, and they trained. So there was a fire happening, and we were all dressed up, kitted up, and everything, and they'd get you off the fire engine, then put you down the pole and everything, and they were getting all these people at the building, and next thing we knew, because somebody did a lift wrong, we was like, oh well, they were sort of had their wrists slapped. So that's the first sort of story I want to tell. The second story is about a more about a drill that we got. Now this story starts in sort of 94, 95, and this is when we had a weapons office. I was in charge of me and Gress, we had vehicles department, but also we had the international weapons, we had a weapons office which communicated with international weapons. Now, all civil offices, the rule was that everybody had to know who everybody was coming on site. Now, on the ground, we had the tax office, the police station. I think we had a taxi office as well, but that's another story. We had the fire station at the back. We had the airport. We had and Hutzer with his diggers. He stored diggers there. That's another story. And you had the kitchen. Now, the typing pool people, the secretaries and people that did all the typing and stuff like that, they were kept in the back. Except for people in the weapons office, which was upstairs. Now, there was a bed in that office because people would sleep in that office. That was a 24-hour office. That and magazinings department. They would write magazines, newspapers. They would write local reports, job reports, all the rest of it. And then there was my room, the box room, which had, it was a sort of an office and that. But I was always linked to the 999. Now, the 999 phones were never in our building for some reason. We never had 999. They were in, I can't remember where they were. But we did have a control room out back. That was another thing that we had on the other side, and it was an absolute mash of things. We had a control room in Scarborough, but I'll talk about that story another day, because that links with my Uncle John and a job that he got through us, and it was the last job in Virginia Street that we got. Well, it was a small job, but anyway, getting back to this one. So this was an expedition. So we're all signing off at night. And because I was only a kid back then, I was only about 7 or 8, we'd go to bed early, as kids do. You don't stay up all night. Gress was, he was doing the car stuff, vehicles, cars, vans. We didn't have very many vehicles on our site, but the vehicles we did have on site, we had 2 emergency police cars, and I think we had a patrol car. And we had all the air vehicles which were monitored in and out. Anyway, this story starts when Gress was filling in for the other Gress. There was 2 Gresses. There was Gress Wilkinson, who worked on Garage, and there was Gress Vaines, Gress Hines and Gress Vaines, who's now Gress Wilkinson, but we won't get into that. So, there was a lad called Peter. He finished early because he was only patrol management, so he finished early. It was like a 9 in the morning till 9 at night. The fire crew, the people in the office, they finished early. You had a couple of people who were doing nights. And so anyway, and this is when we were a staff down. All these things happen when you're a staff down. Gress was at the pub. He'd finished shift. He finished early this night because he went to see his friend. His brother was in a spot of bother. And Gress was only, he was sort of, he'd come from the civil service.
6:38 p.m.
So, he came from the civil service, so he was literally, anyway. It was a bit of a strange evening because the people from the 999 department, oh yes, I know where they were. Well, that links into another story, but that I'm going to tell in a minute. So the people from the 999 department, they were always on call. People that work on 999, they're 24 hour. We had very few operators. So I rang Hutzer, who wasn't really, he was our maintenance bloke. And I rang Gress Hines, and I said to them both, look, you need to come back because we're very short-staffed. And I said, if there's any problems, I'll ring you, right? Bear in mind, I knew these guys inside out. And I said, look, I've done a car park control at 4 o'clock. I knew the vehicles that were coming on and coming off because you did it, you did the car park, you walked around the car park and you checked everything that was on. And then there was my mum and dad's car and my granddad's car. And I would always me and Gress would drive around the car park, and then we would do patrol and we'd do a bit of drilling and all the rest of that. So then and that was when I got the 999 phone. The emergency phone. I got the red phone, boys and girls. It was a radio phone. And that was when we turned that into an emergency phone. It had just been recruited as the emergency phone. So literally, that went straight through to the 999 department. I had another radio phone and another mobile phone. I had about 3 or 4 phones, which I took to bed with me, in my bed. We had a phone on the desk, which called straight downstairs. And I could get Gress if I needed him. He had his radio phone. He was on channel 673. We'd done, the radio phones had been retested. Anyway, that's another story. If you want the story about the radio phones, I'll tell that in another episode. But basically what happened was, this was my first time having the emergency phone, the red phone. And I was only told to use this phone on 999 calls. And I'd used it about 3 times. I used it a couple of times on Coast Guard after this time. I did use it to call to reception, make calls to reception or calls to the garage, because it was like a fast call, straight in, this car needs to come in, blah, 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 or checks on car park that needs doing, security checks, all the rest of it, right? That night, I'd gone to bed and I'd gone to sleep, okay? So I was in bed, I was in sleep, right? In the middle of the night, I got a call in my 999 phone. Now, Gress had come back from the pub, and he came back to my office, and he just, he used to stay at mine. That was what he did. But he took my phone and answered the call. There had been somebody who tried to put a bomb under someone's car. And this went on in a lot of offices. And we'd done this every day. We'd done checks for bombs underneath cars. You did your checks. Okay, is there a bomb underneath their car? It was a very common thing. Car bombs were planted. People trying to blow cars up. And it went on. So I was told the following morning, Steve, there was a car underneath the bomb underneath the car. Nothing was blown up. We managed to stop it. It was the bomb disposal were called and all the rest of it. Now, there is another story linked to that where a car was bombed off-site and the vehicle registration was lost because it wasn't, we didn't have today's technology. Now, the last story that I'm going to tell was my nan, I think it was either my nan's friend or mummy's friend, Brenda, and we had all our stuff stored there. But what we also had there was the national computer, one of the national computers we had there. And we were not allowed to touch it. We were not allowed to go near it because this computer had all the databases, all the directories. And Gress and his brother were there one day, and apparently they were looking for a man who'd been stabbed. So, there you go. That's literally a very short and sweet story, but I hope you've enjoyed all these stories. I'll do the radio phone another time. I'll do the other story about the man in the river. That's quite an impressive one. And that's quite, that was a really serious one. And that was my first look into one of these, how you looked into an aquarium back then. So anyway, if you want more of these strange, mysterious stories, I'll give you them.
Mic trigger, mic lock, finish recording.